Hey everyone, welcome back. I said it, and here I am. Let's start off our Veilbreaker adventures by taking a look at our newest Hoplite, Styanax. He's our 50th Warframe added over the past 9 years, and you can currently get him for free by just logging into the game, or at least until September 23rd, at which point he will finally be farmable and buyable from the in-game shop. Currently, there is no other way to obtain him, so be careful if you're thinking on feeding him to the Helminth, as he's stronger than you think. Veilbreaker has been a hefty update with a ton of quality of life changes, but this has resulted in a couple of altered build interactions. Simply put, some of my videos are not what they used to be. I'll sum this up at the Oberon build I just made a few days ago apparently got massively buffed because Hollowed Reckoning was massively buffed. The Asthma build is apparently dead because the turrets now have a hard cap on their duration. All the Frost builds I've made are now even easier to full strip on because, oh yeah, there were some pretty massive armor strip changes with his mainline. But this isn't the video for that. I have plenty of new builds to showcase moving forward, so expect me to be actively uploading once again. Now, since Styanax is new, I'm going to go through the tradition of breaking down his kit first before stepping into the build options and mechanics, both Helminth and non-Helminth. Here we go. Styanax is a warrior through and through. He's not the special chosen one, he is the one who fought for his power. You can feel it through his abilities and makes him feel incredibly alive and fun. This is reflected in his very active and aggressive kit, the Struggle, which flows together in a logical way, but there are other quirks hidden in his design. His once Axios Javelin is his bread and butter for staying alive. Remember when I said Cold Horizon was probably the newest, best grouping tool? Yeah, this is a Sidegrade to that. It also ragdolls, so whoopee for hit scan AoEs. Now, while it requires enemy impalement for the suck effect to work properly, the effect is rather generous with extensive bullet magnetism. I repeat, if this ability doesn't hit an enemy, it will not suck anything in. Axios Javelin has the largest grouping radius of any suck ability to date at base 15 meters. However, it has a hard line of sight check that may take getting used to. This is why range is important to his kit, because even the closest enemies behind cover will be completely immune to the pull. So you better make sure everything within shooting range that can see you is pulled. The damage it does is negligible, so treat this purely as a utility ability. The duration stat here is useless as it represents how long the enemy you speared directly stays stuck to the floor or wall. Yes, the single original enemy you hit. Oh, and it only costs 15 energy to use. His 2 Tharros Strike is his Helminth subsume and is the bread and butter of his kit. It allows even a non-Helminth Styanax to scale indefinitely. This is an AoE defense strip ability that also restores some health. Because we're using a shield gate setup today, the health is not too important, however it will play a role in a strategy later onwards. The damage the skill does is also mostly irrelevant, whereas the defense strip starts at 50% and scales linearly to 100% strip at 200 strength. Defense strip is important because this means it not only removes armor but also shields from enemies. While it hits only as a wide cone in front, this is perfect when used with this one since its massive range allows you to pull all enemies into one place. 25 energy to cast, simple and effective. Rally Point is his team's support ability, but also a double-edged sword. Casting this increases the aggro Styanax holds, forcing enemies to prioritize him over his teammates. In solo play, the aggro mechanic holds minimal effect, but more importantly, it regenerates energy of squad members in range over time. Keep in mind, Zenerek has a regen rate of 5 per second, so with a little strength, this ability easily matches that focus perk. Styanax and his allies also regen shields for every kill assist, meaning you only need to tag enemies and not necessarily kill enemies that die to gain shields back. This ability is actually extremely important, keeping him alive on certain builds, which we will also cover later. It also has a hefty base duration of 30 seconds, making it very flexible even on lower duration builds. His 4 Final Stand is the skill you are probably most familiar with. Flashy, satisfying, and smooth. This is Styanax's legacy. You ascend into the air and hurl a multitude of Axios javelins at enemies in a mostly horizontal fire line. Your main spears will hit where you aim, whereas all adjacent spears hit to the left and right, resulting in a pseudo-fixed line freely controllable with your mouse. The javelins appear to have a certain amount of body punch through, easily passing through these 4 enemies. Colliding with a physical object or geometry results in a small radial explosion of the spear. The radial explosion appears to have no fall off, however direct hits appear to deal somewhere around 5 to 10 times more damage. Both the explosion and direct hits force proc slash, resulting in many bleed procs. For ability nuke builds, this is his only true DPS ability. While flashy, it is nowhere near overpowered, and is actually rather average, with lower DPS than expected due to a variety of bugs and traits hidden in this ability. First of all, you cannot tighten or spread out the aim of spears thrown, meaning only a portion of the damage is concentrated at where you actually aim. This results in wasted DPS when enemies are densely grouped as one. This also means the ability scales poorly at hitting priority targets, such as Demliths or Acolytes, since its firepower comes from the sheer number of slash procs you throw in the general direction of a crowd. There also appears to be a line of sight check on the AoE explosion. If there are 3 enemies in a row and the front one is hit with the explosion, it will only hit the enemy behind it. The third enemy hidden behind the second enemy will escape unscathed. This is not as much of an issue in normal spawn density on Steel Path, but keep in mind that while grouping enemies with this one makes them easier to kill by placing them all in front of you, this also significantly increases enemy density in one location and can lead to blocked AoEs. There are 2 variations of ability-based nukes on Styanax. The armor strip version kills enemies faster, albeit with a lower damage. The faster kills result in less blocked AoEs, whereas the raw slash build scales higher, however the delayed bleedouts result in more blocked AoEs. His 4 also has 0 iframes, and the number of spears thrown scales linearly with duration. This means that dumping duration makes his 4 near useless. Now, duration does not affect his 1 and 2, and his 3 already has high base duration. However, modding for high duration is not advised either. This is because it will massively extend the duration spent throwing spears, leaving you open to attack from the sides and behind, as his 4 is directional. Natural talent and power transfer only increase the initial cast speed before spears are thrown and not the spear throwing phase itself of the ability. This ability cannot be cancelled by any other ability. Casting your 2 results in you floating around early and unable to drop to the floor. Going into Operator does not end the ability either, and if your 3 is active, it means Styanax has an active duration ability and he will not be invincible. Therefore, builds focused around nuking with his 4 are best built around neutral duration. This is because full armor strip makes more spears unnecessary, as the sheer number of existing spears will rip enemies apart. Conversely, on slash DPS builds, the sheer amount of slash procs will bleed out even the strongest enemies without having to build higher duration. Finally, his 4 is treated as a non-weapon weapon. This means that his 4 benefits from weapon buff sources, however it is not classified as a type of weapon, therefore it cannot benefit from primary, secondary, or melee oriented buffs. It also ignores all sources of elemental damage buffs and does not interact with physical buff objects, such as volt shields or Mutalisk Quanta orbs. However, it does benefit from global weapon damage buffs, such as Vigorous Swap and Arcane Arachne. I presume this means it would also benefit from Vex Armor then. This is important because all abilities are considered to have 100% base damage. Strength on abilities, with few exceptions, boost the original value of ability damage and not the base damage. This means that base damage buffs such as Vigorous Swap and Arcane Arachne interact multiplicatively with strength. This is an extremely important factor that we will use to amplify Final Stand with later. Now, not all abilities are considered weapons, however on Styanax's kit, his 1 and 4 share this interaction. While both abilities can crit with Hero's Covenant, Smita, or Arcane Avenger buffs, there is currently no way to boost the critical damage of either ability, which have a crit multiplier of 1.0. And that's it for his kit, so let's look at those build options. Our first build today is a non-Helminth ability nuke Styanax. This is supposed to be Umbral Intensified, but I have polarity problems. If you do not use Umbral Intensify here, you will not reach 200 strength, so for the meantime I will use a similar build like this. As mentioned earlier, these are mostly neutral base duration builds to minimize vulnerability windows of Final Stand while you nuke enemies. Prime Flow and Energize, as well as Equilibrium are required for this build since we are at 100 efficiency. It costs 147 energy on this specific build, or 140 if you have Umbral Intensify to cast the full DPS rotation. 100 efficiency is chosen because it allows us 3 or 4 to fully regenerate shields on cast for shield gating, so long as we're using Brief Respite and 3 Augermons, with 2 coming from your pistol. You'll be unable to shield gate properly in Styanax without Brief Respite because he has excessively high base shields, 188 even with the Decay Dragon Key. Casting his 3 on this build regenerates 212 shields, whereas casting his 4 regenerates 282 shields. Prime Flow is mandatory, since his base kit only has 225 energy, which is barely enough to cast all of your abilities once. The 160 strength benchmark is important since we are using Matterai today, both for power transfer, which gives an innate natural talent effect on transference, and Void Sling for plus 40% strength lasting 20 seconds after a double Void Sling. This ensures that our 2 always strips 100% armor in a single cast. Stretch and Augur Reach give us 175 range, which is enough for his 1 to have a 26.25 suck radius. This ensures you get the most out of grouping enemies together to nuke with Final Stand. Your 3 also grants you approximately 6 energy per second at 200 strength, which is even stronger than Zeneric's Wellspring effect. Rolling Guard as usual to remove pesky status effects, as well as iframes when your shields break before you can recast your 3 to reset all shields and still have time to cast your 1 and ragdoll your attackers before Rolling Guard wears off. Prime Sure-Footed is handy here for knockdown immunity, otherwise Handspring is advised, as well as on all the following builds. And now, Vigorous Swap and Arcane Arachne. Earlier I mentioned that Styanax's 1 and 4 are considered non-weapon weapons and can take base damage buffs. Vigorous Swap adds 165% base damage to Final Stand, whereas Arcane Arachne adds 150% and instantly procs on a wall latch. These result in 415% base damage scaling of Final Stand, or 4.15 times more damage than normal, before accounting for strength scaling multiplicatively. This is the reason why we can make his 4 hit so hard. Finally, our pets. The pet today is a Panzer, and will be used in all 3 Styanax builds, so I will only show it once. Its main purpose is to help us proc Equilibrium for better energy economy by spreading viral quills for tile-wide pet assists. Killing these enemies will be easy by sucking them up with Styanax's 1, and popping the spores with his 4 will quickly spread viral procs across the crowd as they die. All enemies tagged with spores will proc Synth Deconstruct, spawning a ton of extra health orbs. Synth Fiber lets you pick these orbs up even when at full HP, helping to sustain the expensive nuke rotation of Styanax. The rest of the kit is focused around keeping you alive via Martyr Symbiosis if shield gating fails you, and Panzer Devolution for infinite cat lives. Radar will help you figure out where to hunt enemies next for your Axios Javelins, whereas Fetch is self-explanatory. For those that want to take Nuke Styanax further, this is an upgraded slash-based version that ignores armor strip in favor of producing massive bleed procs. This build suffers from slight AoE block issues on the line of sight check of the spears, but overall it has significantly higher firepower than the non-Helminth build. This is a Roar Styanax, which has very interesting interactions with this kit. While the build is mostly the same, I've opted to actually push for even more strength. This is also meant to be on roll intensify. While duration affects the amount of spears his 4 throws, higher duration on your 4 makes you more open to damage while nuking. Strength also affects both Roar and Final Stand damage scaling, whereas duration doesn't. Therefore, you get more damage by building strength, since not only does Roar double dip on bleed procs created by Final Stand, but the 2 abilities are multiplicative to each other, leading to pseudo-quadratic scaling relative to strength. I would not recommend using this build solo, as the negative duration is rather uncomfortable to run for Roar, and in addition to the energy sources I mentioned in build 1, you would also be advised to bring Emergence Dissipate on your operator to restore energy on enemies grouped by as 1. For solo runs, you can replace Umbral Intensify with Prime Continuity. This will massively extend the duration of your Roar, and 3. Besides these changes, the build plays exactly the same, except you do not need to cast your 2 after grouping enemies with your 1. So long as Roar is active, you can immediately cast your 4 on enemies after grouping them up. It is essential that you actually proc Vigorous Swap and Arcane Arachne on this build, since AoE block bugs can still occur until enemies die from bleed out. The faster they bleed out during the nuke, the more spears will be able to spread their AoE efficiently. This is even more important on the 128 duration build, since enemies are more likely to start dying while you are still casting your 4, compared to the 73 duration build. I would highly recommend bringing a slash-based melee to clean up if things don't die, since you don't have armor strip on this build. It's the extra piece of the puzzle for longer runs to ensure things go smoothly. Our last build today is a weapon support build. This means Styanax's kit will only be used to buff your weapons, and we are not looking to use Final Stand at all. In fact, while you can go Helminth-less as shown here, Final Stand is the actual recommended ability to subsume off here. This build is meant to go for endurance runs if you want. With the absurd range on this loadout, I would recommend trying Breach Surge, Radial Blind, Roar for team support, Resonator, or even Quiver for invisible arrows. Archon Intensify can be replaced with Umbral Intensify here if you wish. However, you will then need to run Growing Power in the Ageless to hit above 160 strength so that Matterai can boost you to 200 with Slink Strength so you're 2 full strips. The only thing that sets Archon Intensify builds apart is that running Combat Discipline not only lets you proc Archon Intensify's second effect for a total 60% strength, but it can also activate Arcane Avenger for your weapon of choice and grant plus 45% flat crit chance. If your weapon of choice does not need more crits and would rather have more attack speed through Arcane Velocity, Acceleration, or Strike, then feel free to use Umbral Intensify's setup instead. This build handles by having your 3 active at all times, because we're unable to run Brief Respite. Your teammates can bring it to help, but generally your method of shield regeneration will come from killing enemies to proc instant shield regeneration from your 3, which bypasses shield regeneration delay when your shield breaks. At roughly 200 strength, you will regain 100 shields per kill, which should be a piece of cake combining your 1 to pull enemies in within a 37.5 meter radius, and your 2 to full strip them. This build requires playing very aggressively your 1 and 2 to stay alive. If you're using the Archon Intensify build with Combat Discipline, kills will also proc Combat Discipline to reduce your health. Every new group you encounter will begin with casting your 1 to suck them all together, and then casting your 2 to armor strip. Your 2 also heals you for every enemy hit, offsetting the health drain from Combat Discipline. This is the ability-based heal required to activate the bonus plus 30% strength from Archon Intensify to reach 60%. Since it only lasts 10 seconds, it is effectively like a longer lasting growing power and part of the reason why you need to play so aggressively and cast your 2 every 10 seconds. This mod only triggers off of ability-based heals. It does not include lifesteal, and you have to also actually heal. This means Gloom, Health Orbs, and being at full health do not count. If your health is not full, instant heals like Trinity's Blessing, Styanax's Tharros Strike, regens like Oberon's Renewal, Wisp's Health Molds all can activate Archon Intensify. Operator Arcanes, such as Magus Repair and Elevate, will not activate Archon Intensify, and while I have not tested, it is highly likely Molts Reconstructs, a Warframe Arcane, will not activate it either. So while powerful, Archon Intensify is pretty narrow in its potential, and I do hope that DE changes the condition to just heal-based abilities in the future instead of requiring actual healing from abilities. And there you go, 3 or sort of 4 builds that you can run with Styanax, tested and ready to go for the Veilbreaker update. I hope you're enjoying it so far. The Styanax inbox drop should have been fixed by now, so if you haven't got them yet, just log in. Regarding the Archon mods, there is no way to obtain them right now anymore until next week in the Cal Syndicate shop. So if you don't own the mods yet, you will have to wait until then. Cheers! If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like or better yet subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to get you new information out always as soon as possible, like I've been doing with the Veilbreaker update. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. You won't miss out on any of that, do you? That'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.